Thank you. I think one of the first things I want to ask is how come we're having lunch inside? Of course, it's not quite spring temperature yet, but it's wonderful to have the sunny weather back, and it's great to be with you. I just think about chambers of commerce, and I think about you as job creators. And I just want to say congratulations on another award as being Alaska's Outstanding Chamber. I understand that 2 out of the last 5 years now. Is that right? So congratulations. This is great. And I also appreciate all the work the Chamber and you, Kathy, did in supporting SB 21 and getting the action alert out. And I had it in my folder because I'd read it right after it went out, so I appreciate the help there. Thank you so much. We have much to talk about and time's short. I'm going to, everybody expects me just to dive right into SB 21, right? No, I'm not doing it. I'm going to do it at the end because there are some other important topics to speak to here. And in particular, I met a man in Dillingham about a year ago who was serving, not quite a year ago, who was serving as a village public safety officer. He was a kind and gentle man, and I sat down in the Dillingham Post with him and asked about how life was in Manicodic. That was my first and only introduction to Tom Medall, who lost his life as a village public safety officer just recently. And so our hearts and thoughts and our prayers go out to his family and to his friends, but also it just puts a spike, it just spikes the message that really we have a long way to go when it comes to safety for all Alaskans, not just our VPSOs, but in our homes and in our families. And so I want to raise high right now the banner of Choose Respect and the fight that we have against domestic violence and sexual assault in this state. I raise it high because it is a human issue. It impacts each one of us. It impacts our workplaces. It certainly impacts our cultures. And this March 28th, next Thursday, I believe, we have the opportunity to join across Alaska in 140 communities in marches and rallies, including here at Juneau, noon at the Capitol, at the steps of the Capitol, to say that we as Alaskans will stand up against this scourge, against this evil. And here's what happens when you give up a lunch. And when you take your lunch, heck, I don't care. When you go up to the Capitol and you take your employees, offer your employees, transportation up there if you want. But here's what happens. When you give up your lunch period like that, your lunchtime, and you stand up, the media turns out and they cover it because they know this is important to Alaskans. And when a victim or a survivor of domestic violence or sexual assault sees you standing up, it gives them courage to break free and go get the help they need. Every year after these marches and rallies, we have emails come into our office that tell us about how seeing Alaskans rally for them gave them the courage to stand up and go get some help. So do not minimize the impact of your presence noon next Thursday, not just here, but in 139 or so other communities across the state. I think it's a wonderful testament that Alaskans are standing up in this way. Let me talk about tourism. I see smiles around the room. With the work that we've done together, we have definitely turned a corner when it comes to travel in our small and mid-sized Alaska businesses. I think Alaskan opportunity is on the rise, and it's been a lot of years here that we've worked together, almost 4 now, lowering taxes, streamlining permitting, increasing tourism marketing. And I just wanted to give you one stat for you to kind of hang on to. When we look at business license renewals for tour-related transportation for land, for applications and renewals, we are seeing an increase, a dramatic increase. So in 2009, 19 businesses in these tourism categories, 19 business licenses were in these tourism categories were issued or renewed. 19. In 2012, 126 new or renewed business licenses were issued by the Department of Commerce. And to date, for 2013, it's 144. So from 19 to 144, I think that's entrepreneurialism defined. I mean, that's what's happening in this great state of ours, and I'm proud of Alaskans for stepping up and starting their own businesses. And many of you in this room helped to create that opportunity as well. Our Alaska Department of Commerce put the pedal to the metal on marketing. How many of you saw Top Chef? Yeah? How many of you participated at the salmon bake, Top Chef? Raise your hands. There are a few of you. What? Well, you know, our capital city received some national acclaim with 2 episodes of Top Chef that aired in February. This show was a valuable boost for this city's visibility, reaching millions of viewers. Alaska's tourism and seafood marketing programs worked closely with local businesses to coordinate this national media event. If you watched the show, you saw Tracy's Crab Shack, Gold Creek Salmon Bake, Jorgensen House, and the Governor's House, all featured along with the Mendenhall Glacier, the kitchen at Thunder Mountain High School, and Alaska Glacier Seafoods, and more. So many of you and your businesses participated in this making these Top Chef episodes and the continued tourism marketing of Alaska a success. And I want to say thank you for that. Moving to mining, we've seen an explosion of growth in mineral exploration in recent years. It really is kind of a new gold rush. I enjoyed speaking to the UAS. They had an introduction to mining and mining operations course where they bring high school people in, teach them about mining careers, mining occupations, mining operations. And that is a class that it's interactive across the state. So as I stood in front of the class, had computer screens in front of me with class members in northern Alaska, southwest Alaska, I got to take questions from across the state. But bottom line, Greens Creek, the largest silver mine in the U.S. and the 6th largest silver producer in the world, is Juneau's top private employer, now just surpassing 400 year-round employees, not including the contractors. That makes them the 3rd largest mining employer in the state, and it's quite a huge difference from a decade ago. Kensington has over 300 employees and growing. Core spent over $7 million on exploration at Kensington last year. And the company expects to spend about $8.6 million in exploration this year. Herbert Glacier, another exciting new prospect. In fact, I went to the mining trade show in Vancouver and went into the prospects room where they lay out Alaska prospects, and I walked in and there's Herbert Glacier on the table with people gathered around talking about the prospects. So on Prince of Wales Island and up in Haines, more prospects are being worked and developed. And right now, statewide, we are seeing spending, and actually it's global too, it's not just here, but we're seeing kind of the smaller explorers flattening in their spending. It's part of the natural ebb and flow of that commodities business model, and it relates to the overall economy. But our challenge, like every other industry, is to stay competitive. We're going to do that, maintaining the stable tax structure, solid streamlined permitting practices, and stability in government policy. Couple more things on my mind. Ferries. You know, with 2 new Lynn Canal ferries, we intend to get the same or better service from these vessels built on budget and in Alaska. That's the goal. And I predict it's going to be a great year for the ferry system, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary. Little known fact, my grandfather, who I was not very close to, but my grandfather actually cooked on one of the ferries in the early to mid-'60s. I saw his name on an employee worksheet. So I didn't know that until I was in the legislature. For the Lynn Canal ferries, here's the update. The design concept report for these smaller Alaska-class ferries that's been given to Elliott Bay, the design team under contract, and they're doing an analysis of the design concept. All aspects are being evaluated. You'll find a link on the Marine Highway website for Alaskans to comment and ask questions about the design specs. The cutoff for comments and questions is March 29, and I understand right now that there are fewer than 20 comments. So if you want to know more and you want to comment, please feel free to do that. Marine Highways will prepare a list of frequently asked questions and give those to the design team so they can see the concerns that people have and address them. Those will also be posted on the Marine Highway System website. In April, we expect the design study report to be completed and made public and given to the Marine Transportation Advisory Board, and the project will move on to concept design. I encourage you to keep an open mind about the Dayboat Alaska class ferry. Will the stern deck be partially opened or completely covered? How would that work? We are examining every option to assure that we get what works for Alaskans. That's what will happen. We do know these ferries will bring about 23 Juneau-based jobs and another 20 Haines-based jobs. These are jobs for people who will come home to their families at night. These are great jobs. It's a family-friendly approach. Okay, SB 21. You know I had to get here at some point. How many of you were able, no, I'm not very able. Most of us don't spend our nights watching gavel to gavel, but I did, yeah, Kathy did. Okay, I did too. They didn't want me on the floor, so I watched on TV. If you watch the press conference afterwards with the majority caucus in the Senate, Senator and Senate President Charlie Huggins told a story. He said that just recently he was down in North Dakota visiting the oil patch there to see what heavy investment in the oil patch in North Dakota looks like. And he noticed, he ran into several young men, but one young man in particular he struck up a conversation with, found out he was from Alaska. And the senator asked him, after telling kind of who he was and why he was there, the senator said, so why are you down here? And he said, because I needed work, and I wanted to work in the oil patch. And I couldn't find a job in Alaska. And the way Senator Huggins told the story was so compelling because essentially the young man looked at him and said, can you fix it at home so I can come home? Can you fix the tax structure at home so I can come home? That's when tax change becomes personal and real. Because it's not about the government's coffers, it's about creating opportunity in the private sector for Alaskans. That's where we are headed as a state. We are not going to be satisfied with decline and a declining future. That's the point here. We are guaranteed decline if we continue the course we're on. You can argue over whether it's 4.2 or 4.6 or 6% decline, which is what some of the senators were doing last night on television. But the bottom line is we're in decline. We need to work as hard as we can to stem the decline because that is what will create opportunities for not only that young man, but also for many others in this state. So the bill passed, SB 21 passed. I believe it actually just before I came over completed its final vote, is on its way to the House now. I think it does meet the four guiding principles that I set out there at first. The first one, that it'd be fair to Alaskans. It has the essential elements that the bill I proposed. It better protects Alaskans at lower prices because it doesn't have those tax credits out there. Let me just tell you about those. We're on the hook for $1 billion worth of tax credits under the current tax regime in the next year. Those are tax credits that are based upon spending in the oil fields. They're not necessarily linked to production. But we're on the hook for those tax credits regardless of the price of oil. So oil goes down to 90, 85 bucks a barrel. We're writing checks effectively for $1 billion, but we don't have the money to cover it. So there's a high risk there, and there's a high risk to the Treasury, and it really does distort the system when we are on the hook at the bottom end, low end, for such high tax credits with no corresponding way to meet them. The bill clearly focuses on new production. The gross revenue exclusion in there, which says if you find new oil, you will get to exclude a portion of that value from this tax rate. That's effectively what it is, and it's only for new oil. So there is a clear focus on new production. Like I said, I think it's simple, and it focuses on restoring balance to the system. It's simple because because progressivity, the effect of the bill right now is to make it slightly progressive, but we don't have the monthly progressivity calculations that we now do for each company in each field every month of the year. Those are gone, those calculations. So it's a much more simple calculation. What I'm urging legislators to do, including just about 2 or 3 hours ago in the Capitol, as the bill moves forward now, and new legislators, new House members now take it up. They've actually had several hearings in the House already this year, but I'm urging those House members to look at the proposal that's there. Look at SB 21 as it is now, and the dials or knobs that are there. And if you think that the system as passed to you as House members needs adjustment, then work those knobs and dials and come up with what you think is a competitive tax system, one that is fair to Alaskans, and one will inspire new production. But use those knobs and levers that are there. Don't try to make it more complicated by putting in new levers, new knobs, new dials. We actually have a simple but effective system for Alaskans geared towards new production in SB 21. I wanted to keep some time open for questions, but there is another bill that I wanted to talk about, and it's HB 76. It's our unemployment insurance payroll tax. We call it a payroll tax decrease bill. Many of you understand if you own businesses, heck, if you're employed, your payroll tax gets pulled from your check. Well, every year under state law, that payroll tax automatically increases. It doesn't matter whether there's enough money in the unemployment insurance fund to fund unemployment compensation. Under the law, you are still giving up your payroll, your earnings as Alaskans, and as business owners, you're paying increased payroll taxes every year, unemployment insurance contributions, to fund an unemployment insurance trust fund. Now, my first priority is to make sure that trust fund is solvent. This legislation assures that the trust fund is solvent. When it is solvent, it would give, under our original proposal, it would give the Department of Labor Commissioner the discretion to stop that automatic increase. My bottom line philosophy is that money is yours. You earned it, you took the risk for it, you worked for it, and if the state does not need that for a solvent unemployment insurance fund, then there is no reason for the state to hold on to it. This is so foundational to whose money it is and actually who works for whom. I just want you to be aware of it because this is one of those little secret taxes that you bear and your businesses bear, and you shouldn't have to. So I've got a lot of other topics we could talk about, but I'd love to just have a little interaction too and take some questions on some different, lots of time. Well, usually I don't speak for more than 10 minutes unless it's a state of the state or something. So. But Kathy, could you grab my iced tea for me, please? Thanks. No press, just chamber members here, okay? I've already gotten my interview, so.
Hi, Governor Parnell. I just want to start with a couple of comments. I'm a Democrat. That's a tough thing in this room.
Hey, my dad was a Democrat. No, my dad was a Democrat. My mom was a Republican. I chose right, but.
I just want to thank you. I'm in aviation and tourism, and some of the things you've done in the last several years have allowed our businesses to grow and prosper in a way that 3 or 4 years ago we weren't sure were going to happen. The other thing, and it's something that's pretty dear to my heart, is my wife is the direct services manager at Juneau Shelter. And you have taken a leadership role in domestic violence and sexual assault in a way that no one has previously. And I just want to thank you for that. It's a big deal in our house and in this community. And because I'm in aviation, I get to go to a lot of the smaller communities around here. And it has an effect there too. And I just want to thank you for that. But now, aside from that, because of some of the things that are changing with how the federal government is working, a lot of industries that depend on federal dollars are seeing some troubles in the near future. One of the things that aviation has going on, specifically in the state of Alaska, is the Medallion program. And Medallion largely operates on federal funds. And I was wondering, has anyone approached you as to what the state might be able to do to help support Medallion as it moves forward in successfully growing the safety culture for aviation in the state of Alaska?
Yes. Gosh, of all the questions you could have asked, you picked a wonderful one for me, so thank you. I have attended the Medallion Safety Award dinners multiple times because the Medallion certification diminishes the number of lost lives and injuries due to aviation accidents. And so if you're traveling on a Medallion certified air carrier, you're traveling with people who have been certified, they've been trained above and beyond minimums. And I've been a strong supporter of the Medallion program. And in our governor's budget, we just submitted on Tuesday our final, I think they're our final governor's budget amendments. They're always tweaks and the like, but these were very skinny budget amendments, and I can think of only two perhaps in the capital arena. One was the Kivalina evacuation route, and then the other one was a request for $1 million for the Medallion safety program. So it's very high on my priority list. I've asked for it from the legislature, so I very much appreciate the question. Thank you.
Governor, I have a question. Could you tell us what we're going to do as a state to deal with the federal health care system that's coming down upon us right now?
So I'll take it at the big picture level. I've had two decisions to make beyond litigating over our concerns, because the litigation is now concluded. One of the points we were successful on had to do with the attempt by the federal government to coerce every state into a Medicaid expansion, or else risk losing your entire federal Medicaid funding, all of it. And the court said that was inappropriate. So that is one of the decisions that every governor and legislature, frankly, gets to make on behalf of their citizens, whether Medicaid should be expanded or not. The previous decision, the first decision, was whether to engage in and fund a state exchange program, health insurance exchange. On the first issue, on the health insurance exchange, the federal government said, we'll fund the system, we'll fund design, implementation of it. If a state doesn't, I said, fine, thank you. We'll let you do that, and we'll coordinate with you to the extent that our Medicaid program has to interface with that new exchange. But on that decision, I said the federal government can design and implement that. On the Medicaid expansion, I had a conversation at the National Governors Association with Secretary Sebelius, the U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary. And I asked whether the state might have some flexibility in that Medicaid expansion. And I was speaking at that moment and that time about a partial expansion, whether that was possible, whether she would grant that opportunity, because we were looking at everything from no expansion, full expansion, something in between, with the concerns lingering in the back of my head about, will the federal government be there financially for us to keep their promise to the state? Because if we expand to 138%, and add millions, hundreds of millions, and then ultimately billions of dollars of obligation, the federal government has already cut its Medicaid reimbursement to us in the last 2 years one time. It cut its FMAP reimbursement. If they do not keep their promise to fund their share of that expansion, the state's left on the hook with a bunch of beneficiaries who are now counting on the state to do that. And I asked whether or not a partial expansion would be possible. She said no. And I told her at that time that I said, given that in January we went through the fiscal cliff round, then we came through the sequester, then we came through, now we're coming towards the continuing resolution, and then we've got the debt limit issues. I said, I don't have any comfort that I can, as governor of this state, put us at financial risk like that. And she said, well, you know that President Obama is committed to this. And I said, that's great. I understand that he will make this a priority, and give him credit that he'll make his health care law a priority. But I'm not worried about the next 3 years. I'm worried about the next 10 and 20 and 30 years. And so that's where we are. When I came back from that trip, when I told legislators and I told the press that for this year, I am not going to ask the legislature to expand Medicaid, that we would continue studying that issue, and that if somebody could demonstrate across the next 6 months that it's in the state's interest to do that. And by the way, the secretary is giving other states more flexibility in other ways. And so this is maturing, and we will have opportunities perhaps in 6 months, 2 years, or 4 years that we don't have right now. And we don't have to buy in fully into an unsustainable way of doing business. So the next decision point for every governor who has decided not to would be when they submit their budget to the legislature. So I could On December 15, I will make another decision whether to include that in our budget and ask the legislature for an expansion. At this point, I've said no. Yeah, thanks. Hey, wait a second. Do you count as press? You don't. Yeah, you're not a reporter though. So.
Thank you, Governor, for sharing with us today. I couldn't let you get out of here without an SB 21 question.
Oh, okay.
You introduced the base tax rate of 25%. Senate's moved that up to 35 now. What kind of, when we're looking at the incentive for them the oil producers to produce more, what kind of impact is that 10% likely to have?
So one of the drawbacks of just looking at just the rate is that's really too narrow a focus. The focus has to be on the entire bill, and what does the entire bill do to Alaska's competitiveness? And competitiveness is a range. So right now we tax more than North Dakota, Texas, a range of jurisdictions. Our experts tell us that my bill, the administration's bill, is in that competitive range. So do the legislature's experts. The legislature's experts and our administration experts tell us that the SB 21 is in that competitiveness range too. But it's not just about the 25 to 35% tax rate. It's about other elements that get worked together. And in this case, both our experts, legislature's experts and administration experts, agree that and it partly involves the $5 credit that's in the bill on SB 21, they are both in the competitive range. So that's how I measure things. And we heard a lot of talk about how there's no commitments from the companies. And I'll just say, first off, last year when we had $14 billion worth of something on the table, people would just say, well, the companies are lying to you. This year they say they're not even making any promises. Well, I'm not looking to the companies. I'm looking to the independent experts that we've hired and that the legislature's hired to tell us whether we're in that competitive range. Yep, you bet.
Good, I thought I was going to have to go towards transportation.
I just have a quick one also about Senate Bill 21. I was curious to see that it drew some opposition from Republicans. And then the primary criticism was that it was too heavily weighted towards the legacy fields without enough incentive on new production. I'm just curious, what do you make of that criticism, and does that fall in the category of knobs and levers that could be turned in the future?
That reflects a couple different motivations, and I don't want to speak for those legislators. I think it's better if you ask them yourself. But here's what I've seen in general. People have this notion, including people making arguments that I heard on the floor last night. People have this notion that legacy fields are already being produced, and so the producers are just going to keep producing them, and don't worry about it. Be happy. It's going to come out eventually. But that's not the reality of the reservoirs. For years, they've been producing the lighter oils. They haven't been going into those parts of the reservoir for the mid-gravity or viscous oils, nor have they been going in to get the heavy oils in significant quantities. They've produced a little bit of each. It's those. So when a senator stood up last night and says we've got 9 billion barrels of proven reserves, he's implying that we're going to recover 9 billion barrels. But if, say, for instance, 6 billion of those are mid-gravity or heavy oil, and they can take their profits from Alaska and make X plus 1% somewhere else versus X percent here, because those are higher cost reservoirs to develop, the profits are going to go from here somewhere else. If we have a tax regime here geared to new production, and we have demonstrated proof from our consultants and from the legislature's consultants that they're in the competitive range, I believe they will produce more oil than we would otherwise get on this declining curve we're on. Because they are investing more money. Every year they have to invest money to keep those fields going, but they're investing it to maintain that decline of lighter oil. They're not investing it for the mid-gravity oil and for the heavies. Those are the legacy fields. The other thing the Senate did that I think maintained the integrity of the bill is they said the maximum tax benefit from the bill for new production is really on new production. You don't get the major tax breaks in the bill for producing the same lighter oils, but if it's new production from the legacy fields, and I call it mid-gravity viscous, but something new, they're going to get the tax break for it, because we don't want to incentivize just spending in the fields. We want to incentivize spending on production, and we want to incentivize new production. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but I don't want to speak for senators. They've done a good job of speaking for themselves last night.
Thank you, Governor. I was wondering if you could clarify what's happening with, I think, HB 80 regarding the wastewater discharge.
So, you mean what's happened after passage now? Well, I think the next step is DEC has to work on the cruise ship wastewater permits. So I think the next step is for DEC to complete its work in time for this next year's cruise ship season is the permitting process. So the bills have already passed. The bill has already passed. It's been signed into law. Now DEC is permitting under the new law.
Okay, once the session is over, Governor, can you tell us how much more road we're going to get this year?
I cannot. I wish I could tell you. I mean, if you want to have a road grader party or something, but.
Well, we might have to, and I just want to thank you, commend you for your appointment of Pat Kemp as Commissioner of Transportation. He is an incredible.
He's doing a great job. I enjoy working with Pat. I've gotten to know him a lot better. And he's keeping in close touch, which is really good. So.
I grew up and graduated with Pat, so I would like to second that. He's a great man. Not really a question, Governor, just a comment. I would just like to say how much I appreciate, and many of my friends, that at every juncture when the federal government tries to overstep its bounds in Alaska and increase its authority over us, what a great champion you are for our state's rights and our sovereignty. And I'd just like to commend you.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you. You know, on that point, I think we're aligned philosophically on that in terms of why we do it, to maintain our ability to grow our economy and opportunity here for us. But we have been getting, quite a reputation that we are standing up, and the only ones that I've heard really complaining about it are the ones who want to do us damage. I was just thinking last night, and speaking with my Attorney General, we've had some good news in recent times. We've won three out of the last 4 decisions that I was able to think of right off the top of my head last night. One was the Decker decision, which is an MPDES, a water discharge permit. One was the polar bear critical habitat. There was a third one I had in my head last night, and we did lose a polar bear listing case. So we were 3 out of 4 that I could think of right off the top of my head. So these are legitimate claims that the state has to manage our own destiny. And that's something we'll continue to do, so I appreciate the encouragement. Thanks. Well, I think I'm going to close it down if that's all right, Kathy. This is good. And I appreciate so much the chance to come be with you, hear from you, and answer your questions. And thank you for taking the time to be here. Thanks.